What's up, everybody? This is your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga, here to bring you another video with no frills, just the analysis. And today I'm going to be talking about season 3 of The Walking Dead, just to give you some of my speculations, predictions, and just to update you on some of the info that I found out just over the last maybe month or so by watching The Talking Dead and also by looking at the teaser trailer for season 3 and also the 4-minute trailer. Actually, and if you haven't seen that, now that I've mentioned the trailer, links in the description box below. So click on the link in the description box and it'll take you directly to that 4-minute long trailer of season 3. So for those of you who don't know, and I know it feels like season 2 just went off, but season 3 will be here in just 2 short months. In fact, the season 3 premiere of The Walking Dead comes on Sunday, October the 14th. So set your clocks and get ready, because I know I'm definitely gonna be ready for season 3 of The Walking Dead. I've been waiting for this for the last 5 months. So yes. So before I get into this, let me just say a couple of things. Or maybe, yeah, just a couple of things. First, spoilers. Please, I have not read the comic books, and I'm not even sure how many of my viewers actually have read the comic books, but I for certain have not read the comic books. So, if you have any sort of spoilerish material, please do not post it in the comment section. It would be greatly appreciated if you could not spoil everybody in the comment section below. All right. Now, as for season 3, I'm pretty sure that it's going to be darker than season 2. And I know that might be saying something because we're already in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, but I think that given the fact that they were on this sort of beautiful farm and they were sort of using that as a safe haven to protect them from the zombie apocalypse, and now that the farm has been destroyed, I'm pretty sure that the destruction of the farm has been set up as foreshadowing to show how things are gonna, if you thought things were bad in season 2, they're gonna get a whole hell of a lot worse in season 3. So I'm almost certain about that foreshadowing. And not only that, just because of the fact that as they were sort of kicked off the farm at the end of season 2, and then we get to see that panoramic shot of the prison, very, very foreboding. So I'm almost certain things are going to get a whole hell of a lot worse in season 3. And not only will they have to contend with the environment being the fact that there are zombies all over the place, but now they're going to have to contend with human evil in the form of the governor. And like I said, I haven't read the comic books, but given what I've seen from the trailer and from what was being said on The Talking Dead, I pretty much have a general impression of what type of jackass the governor will turn out to be. So here's how it's going to go. First, I want to talk about Rick, and I want to talk about 3 things specifically, although those aren't the only things that I'll talk about with respect to Rick. First, I have to address Merle's return. That's going to be wow. Then I want to talk about the governor and Rick's relationship to the governor, at least my speculations about the relationship. And then, of course, Rick's characterization. And then I want to talk about Michonne. I didn't, when I first saw her, I thought her name was pronounced Michonne, but it's actually Michonne. So I want to talk about Michonne and Andrea. And then I want to talk about the pacing, or what I expect from the pacing of the 3rd season. And then I have to address T-Dog very quickly at the end. So first, let's talk about Rick. And in particular, the return of Merle. Wow. The last time we saw Merle, the only thing we saw of Merle was his hand that he had to chop off from when he had been chained to the top of the roof. And at that time, we didn't know anything about where Merle was or what was going on with Merle, but apparently Merle will return. It's been confirmed. And what can we expect from Merle? Well, I suspect that we can probably expect him to be the same racist scumbag that he was when he left. And I think it's rather fitting given what we know about the governor in terms of an idea about the type of antagonist or bad guy that he's supposed to be, perhaps even villain of the third season, and the type of character that Merle is. And it seems fitting that those two would link up together. And I'm expecting Merle to be some sort of henchman or in some way connected to working for the governor. I also suspect that we can expect Merle to be very, very angry because of the fact that he was chained to the roof of that building and left there and had to cut off his own hand in order to escape from the zombies. So I expect there to be a very significant amount of tension between Merle and the rest of the group. Now, I know that some people have been talking about and have been speculating about whether or not Daryl will have to eventually take sides between Rick and the group and his brother Merle. And honestly, I don't think that Daryl will betray the group to sort of get back in with Merle. And I understand that they're brothers and that they've been through a lot, but I think that, well, for one thing, Daryl was always the better brother. I mean, there was some tension, a little bit of racial tension between Daryl and T Dog, for example, at the beginning. But Merle, not Merle, Daryl, always, because their names are so similar, I just confuses me sometimes. But Daryl was always the better brother, and he was the one who seemed to be most reasonable, to be the one who was, most rational. And so I don't think that Daryl will be so um so eager to just team up with his brother Merle as against Rick and the rest of the group. And the second thing is that Daryl has been through a lot of transformative experiences with the group. And once you've lived with a group of people, and not just live with them, but shed blood for them, cried with them, been through multiple near death experiences with them, I think that sort of transforms you and it brings you closer together with that group of people. And I don't think that Daryl will be so willing to throw away the bonds that he has with the group in order to side with Merle, who everybody knows is pretty much just a racist scumbag, especially if Daryl is going to be linked to the governor, and the governor will have to, and the governor turns out to be sort of the major villain of season 3. I think that Daryl will eventually side with the group as against Daryl and the governor. That's my take on it. Now, in terms of Rick and his characterization and his character development, as a lot of people have pointed out, it seems like now the group is going to be governed by what's been known as a Rick-tatorship in the Walking Dead fandom, and I think that's definitely going to be where this is going. It has to be that way now. And so what I expect to see are definitely some character building episodes to sort of firmly establish the new Rick Grimes and to sort of explore the new developments in terms of Rick's characterization. And I think that the reason why this has happened this way, the reason why there will be a dictatorship and no more democracies, because survival and democracy just simply don't go hand in hand, especially in very, very extreme cases and in very, very extreme situations. In a situation where it's sort of perhaps feasible or plausible to sit around and deliberate and discuss everybody's ideas, a democracy is good. But in a situation where you have to be very decisive, have to make very quick life or death decisions, you can't just relegate that responsibility to the rest of the group, or else you risk the breakdown of group cohesion, which is precisely what we saw in the last season with the whole Shane subplot. So I think that in terms of the ability of the group to survive, I think Rick is gonna have to step up. And no matter how reluctant Rick is going to be in terms of dealing with his newfound responsibility, I think that he's going to have to get used to this new leadership role. And one of the things that I'm very interested for the writers to explore is just how dark will they make Rick? Because Rick was always supposed to be the voice of reason, supposed to be the sort of conscience of the group, and I want to see how his new leadership role will influence his moral decision making. And that's what I expect for the writers to explore in season 3. So now let's talk about Rick and the group in general in terms of the new setting of season 3. When I first, at the end of the second season, I didn't know really what was going on because, like I said, I haven't read the comics. But I thought that the prison was going to be a place where they would try to not make a last stand, but I thought that the prison would be a sort of replacement for the farm in terms of a safe haven. But what I didn't expect was that there would be a whole new town of Woodbury, which I didn't even realize what Woodbury was until I saw the trailer, maybe like within the last week or so. And one of the things that really, really surprised me, that just absolutely shocked me, was that Woodbury is a town where there are no walkers. And I don't know how they were able to do this or how they were able to quarantine this town. I don't know what the backstory is in terms of Woodbury, but for me, this is just absolutely shocking. And so now I'm definitely interested to know how the group makes the transition from taking over the prison to all of a sudden making that transition from taking over the prison to being a part of Woodbury. I mean, this is very, very interesting to me because I never would have guessed that there would have been a place on Earth that would look as beautiful and as safe as Woodbury looks. But one thing that I've learned, or rather another thing that I've learned from watching The Talking Dead, and also just watching the trailer for season 3, is that apparently the action is going to be ramped up a lot in the next season. And specifically in terms of weapons, apparently, since Woodbury is like this safe haven or this quarantine zone, and you have the governor and, of course, probably his henchmen, which is just speculation on my part, looks like they're going to have machine guns, bazookas. I mean, guns with flashlight silencers. I mean, it looks like it's really the violence and the gore and all of the action that we love about The Walking Dead is definitely going to be ramped up. So I really can't wait to see that. And another thing is that there's going to be a major, and I'm not sure right now if it's going to be, if this antagonism between Rick and the governor. I know there's going to be some antagonism between Rick and the governor, but I'm not sure if that will be the plot of season 3 or just a subplot of season 3. So in other words, I don't know if this antagonism between Rick and the governor will extend for the entirety of season 3, or if Rick will kill the governor at some point during season 3 and take over Woodbury, or I don't know what's going to happen. But what I do know is this, that I know that from the trailer that the governor is going to be the sort of governor or leader of Woodbury. I also know, just from a general impression of his personality or his characterization, which I've learned from both watching The Talking Dead and the season 3 trailer, I know that the governor is going to have some sort of messiah complex, that he will see himself as the savior of this post-apocalyptic world, and that this sort of messiah complex will lead him to make very, very immoral decisions, shall we say, and that he will be sort of the embodiment of perhaps human evil throughout the season 3. And so again, there's going to be this sort of dual aspect to season 3. The first is going to be dealing with the evil that is this zombie apocalypse, and the second is going to be dealing with this human embodiment of evil in the form of the governor. And so, yeah. And apparently the conflict between Rick and the governor is going to start out because, and this is just what I'm able to glean from the season 3 trailer. Rick is going to take over the prison from the walkers at the beginning of season 3. And then the governor is going to step in and try to take the prison away from Rick. So I think that's going to be the sort of seed or the birth of this antagonism between Rick and the governor, and it'll probably just escalate throughout season 3. So let me just talk very briefly about the prison as a sort of symbol and as a metaphor within The Walking Dead in season 3. So, and it's very, very easy to see how the prison is going to be a powerful symbol and metaphor throughout at least the beginning parts of season 3, because I don't think that Rick and the group will stay in that prison throughout season 3. So I think initially they're going to go into the prison, take it over from the walkers, and then move on to Woodbury. That's my general idea of what's going to happen. But in a metaphorical sense, the prison operates as obviously a physical structure, but is also a metaphor for the way in which the earth itself has become basically a prison for all of the survivors in this post-apocalyptic world. So there's no more sense that the earth, which is sort of in a symbol in a symbolic sense, the garden of evil for, as far as we know, life in the universe. But now the earth is going to be a prison for humans throughout the for the foreseeable future, because at this point I can't even see how this post-apocalyptic situation could ever get better. I mean, I don't know if there's a cure for this, for these zombies, or there probably can't be a cure. I don't think so, but I don't see how they can get out of this. But in any event, the earth is basically a prison now. And this prison is going to mirror the descent into darkness. And like I said before, I think that since the destruction of the farm, it's just going to be foreshadowing for the way that things are going from really, really bad to a whole hell of a lot worse. And I expect the prison as a symbol and as a metaphor to follow this narrative arc of from bad to worse. And also prisons in general, whenever they appear in any sort of narrative or fiction or literature, are always symbols of authoritarianism. And this new symbol of authoritarianism is going to mirror Rick's new role as the authoritarian figure or leader of the group, since again there's no more democracy or deliberation within the group. And also the prison is going to be obviously a symbol of death. And I think this is going to be, it's going to be very, very interesting to see precisely how the writers use the prison as a metaphor and as a symbol for death. I think it is going to be a metaphor and a symbol for death, but I'm not sure how they're going to do this, because a lot of the first part of the second season dealt with questions about humanity and precisely what it meant to be a human in this sort of post-apocalyptic situation. And some of the things, or one of the things that I mentioned when I was doing episode reviews for season 2, was that I just can't imagine living in this situation, why anyone would continue to live in this situation, because being human is about more than just survival. And so if the prison is going to be sort of this symbol of death, it begs the question about how the writers will continue to explore the humanity of the people who have to live in this post-apocalyptic situation. And so I think as a symbol and as a metaphor, the prison will be a very major part of the sort of narrative progression and also the character progression of season 3. And also, I'm just wondering how Rick will deal with the governor. Because again, it's not quite clear how dark Rick is going to be. And I'm wondering about precisely how this situation between Rick and the governor is going to be resolved. I wonder if Rick and the group are just going to have to escape from Woodbury in the prison at the end of season 3, or if Rick will wind up killing the governor, or if Woodbury will just be overrun by the walkers at the end of season 3. So it's just not clear to me how Rick's new characterization will factor into the plot of season 3. And so that's one thing that I'm very interested to see. And so but my intuition tells me that I don't think that the group will stay in Woodbury. And I don't know why I feel that way, but I just think that it would it just has to be the case that the group is going to move on, because what kind of story would it be if they just found the safe haven in Woodbury and they were able to stay there? That's not a really a story. I mean, I hope that's not how it ends. That would just be so lame if The Walking Dead as a series really ended that way. But my intuition tells me that The Walking Dead is more of an adventure story that's going to deal with the exploration of the world, and through the eyes of these group members, Rick, Carol and Lori, and all these characters. So that's my intuition. And so if The Walking Dead really is going to be this sort of adventure type story, or this story of exploration, then I think it's going to beg the question, or at least eventually, and I expect this to be done towards the end of season 3, they're going to have to deal with the question of civilization. What precisely is the status of civilization? And I think this just has to be addressed as a part of cueing the viewers in on what type of world, precisely what type of world this is. Because at this point, we don't know if there are other pockets of civilization in the United States or around the world. We don't know if any sort of government of the United States is intact somewhere. We don't know what the status of the military of the United States. We just don't know. And there are just a whole bunch of questions that the writers are going to have to answer for us. And I think it would be very interesting to see how they explore the resolution of these questions. And one of the things that's very, very interesting to me, or was very interesting to me as I was watching The Talking Dead, was when Drew Carey was on, and the question arose of what is the ratio of walkers to people, and Drew Carey said, well, it has to be like 100 to 1. And I'm thinking to myself, holy shit, if the ratio of walkers to humans is 100 to 1, then that is absolutely ridiculous. How will these people ever survive in circumstances where there are 100 walking dead to every one person? Those are just absolutely insane odds. So I'm really, really interested to see how they will continue to progress this story, when for all intents and purposes, all of these people just, it doesn't seem to me that they will just ever be able to get out of the situation, or get any sort of hope for any sort of future. And so one of the interesting things that the writers can do with, or one of the interesting ways that they could attempt to resolve these questions of the status of civilization in season 3, is to figure out what type of information do the people of Woodbury have. I mean, it's a safe haven. They have to have some information or some knowledge about what's going on outside of the boundaries of Woodbury, or if they know anything at all about the status of civilization. And another thing that I was thinking about is, I wonder if Dwayne and Morgan are in Woodbury, or if anybody in Woodbury has seen them or knows anything about them. Because remember, Dwayne and Morgan are from, the first season, and it was never quite resolved as to, what happened to them. So those are just things that I'm wondering about in terms of Rick and the direction that Rick's character will go in, and in terms of the return of Merle, and in terms of Rick and the sort of antagonism in season 3 between him and the governor. So now on to Michonne and Andrea. And to me, I just see them being the dynamic duo. I know from the trailers that at some point they're going to wind up in Woodbury, but at the very beginning, I know they're just going to be a dynamic duo. Andrea's, we all know that Andrea is badass because she was trained by Shane, and we know that Michonne is definitely a badass. So I think it's going to be very, very nice and very, very exciting to see two females just kicking some zombie ass. That's going to be great. But one question that I did have before I saw the trailer was whether or not the plot lines of Andrea and the rest of the group would ever converge again. And it looks like Andrea will meet up with the group. And I'm not sure, but because again I haven't read the comics, but I wonder now that I'm thinking about the convergence of these plot lines, I'm wondering if Michonne will join the group. Because I don't see the group staying there in Woodbury. I see them having to leave Woodbury at the end of season 3, or at least sometime during season 3. And I'm wondering if when the group leaves Woodbury, Michonne is going to tag along with the group. So that's just some questions that I have there about the character of Michonne. I expect that she would, but again, I'm not 100% sure of that. But I know that the plot lines of Andrea and Michonne will converge with the rest of the group, because from what I can see from the season 3 trailer, it looks like Michonne and Andrea are going to be kidnapped by the governor or his henchmen and taken to Woodbury or something along those lines. But I think that Andrea and Michonne will meet up with the group in Woodbury. I think. At least that's the way the trailer made it seem. So, and that's just something very, very brief that I wanted to talk about in terms of Michonne and Andrea. Um Another thing that I want to talk about is the pacing of season 3. And I wonder if season 3 will sort of be structured the way season 2 was, where there was sort of this mixture rather of character building episodes with plot driven episodes. And in particular, I wonder if the writers will continue to explore the morality and the psychology of the group members. I'm pretty sure that they will, but I wonder if it's going to be as slow as it was in the second season, because I know that there was some complaints from some people about the first maybe 6 or 7 episodes of the second season, where we just seem to get like back-to-back episodes of just character building. And I wonder if the structure of the narrative in season 3 will have some character driven episodes, in addition to some plot driven episodes mixed in, or whether or not it will be more character driven or more plot driven. So I'm just very, very curious about the status of the pacing in season 3. And I wonder if if the writers will continue with new arcs of character development, especially for Rick and of course Carl, his son, because Carl is growing up. And there's as I was watching Talking Dead, one of the things that they were talking about was how Carl is going to have to grow up now, and how he's not going to be treated as a kid anymore. And I'm wondering if there will be new character arcs for Daryl as well, in terms of the return of Meryl. So again, my question is, will this be a more plot driven narrative in season 3, or will they continue with these character driven episodes? So that's just briefly what I wanted to talk about in terms of the pacing of season 3. And now let me just briefly touch on T-Dog. I hope T-Dog doesn't continue to be the token black guy. And I really don't want to be that reviewer of The Walking Dead, that black guy who makes this about race, because The Walking Dead really isn't about race. But I can't help but notice that of all the characters, T-Dog, as the token black guy, the token black character, is almost, I mean, I don't think he had a character driven. I don't think there was ever any character development for T-Dog in the second season. For all the other characters, we at least got one episode that was just focused on them and their perspective and their character development throughout that episode. Not the case for T-Dog at all. And one of the other things that I noticed for T-Dog was that he seemed to be limited to a 20-word maximum per episode. I mean, we never really got to see any insights for T-Dog. And the only thing that I remember about T-Dog that even remotely hinted at any sort of character development was when he got sick at the beginning of season 2. That was it. That was it. There's been no characterization for T-Dog, no character development for T-Dog. He's not really been any important, he hasn't really been an important character in any sort of sense for the group. And I think it's time for T-Dog to get some characterization and some character development. It was very, very interesting to me, minor spoiler alert for those who haven't read the comics, although it's not quite a spoiler. T-Dog isn't even a character in the comics. So for the writers or the creators to make a character, cast them as a black character, T-Dog, and then not have any characterization or character development, it really smacks of tokenism. I mean, if you want to have a diverse cast, that's all good and well. I'm all good. I'm all up for diversity. But what you can't do is have fake diversity. You can't have a character, cast them as being black, and then just make them completely irrelevant. Because even though T-Dog is not a character in the comic books, and that might explain why he's sort of being underwritten as a character, there's so many different paths that they can take to make T-Dog an interesting character, because if you create a character who's not in the comic books, well, then you don't really have to be tied down to any sort of conception of what that character is like in terms of how they were written in the comic books. And so there are a lot of interesting directions in which they could take T-Dog's character, and I really don't like the tokenism of T-Dog's character. So that's just my little tidbit on T-Dog as a character. But all in all, I'm definitely looking forward to season 3 of The Walking Dead. Can't wait for October 14th to get here. So, you know, I hope you guys are as excited as I am. So this was your boy Uber Hikari, aka the Nerd Nigga. Just brought you another video with no frills, just the analysis. Peace and have a blessed day.